we wanted to start with personalization. Personalization in terms of relating PLR to personal stories. So when I hear the word personalization, kind of two things come to my mind, and I want to kind of bring forward the distinction here. There's one way of personalizing content where it's just branding. You're putting your logo in there. Patty's on the call. Patty may put a photo of herself there as a personal brand saying, hey, I'm here to help you. That's not the kind of personalization I'm getting into right now. What I mean, that's pretty basic stuff. I imagine you can put in your logos and your brand into a document. What I want to talk about with regards to personalization is relating to the content to stories, making it personal. And we can do this in one of three ways. You can relate the content to your own story. You can relate the content to the story of someone you know or witnessed. So if you do one-on-one work with clients, this is great because you might have a really great success story with one of your clients that you tell future clients or even prospects about a result you were able to achieve working with them. Or it could be something you witnessed as, a friend or family overcame something huge or did something big. That's another way of personalizing PLR. And then last but not least is relating the content to a powerful kind of contemporary story. Could be something you read about, a biography of someone famous, somebody that we would all on this call, a name that we would all recognize. So that's three ways of personalizing, from yourself to someone you know to someone a little bit more well-known. What I have on the screen here is one article from one of our recent packages called Inspiration Compilation. So I know a number of you probably picked that one up because that was on sale recently. So this is just one of the articles inside of there, how to stay inspired to accomplish a goal after the newness, quote unquote, has worn off, right? So I just picked something. Most of our topics at Tools for Motivation, self-help, personal development, most of us can relate to any article, any ebook, at least some of the principles within there through some of our personal experiences in life. So I'm not going to read the whole article here, but the general message, you can see three different arrows on the screen, is if you're working on a goal and it's something that takes a long, long time to achieve, then you're probably going to hit some kind of wall at some point. So here are some three things you can do. First, you can remind yourself who's the boss. In other words, you're the person that set this goal, so you're in charge of deciding what to do next. The second tip is, Tammy, this PLR program is Inspiration Compilation. I can grab a link after. Second tip for this particular article is, hey, if you're feeling down about your goals, take a look back at how far you've come, right? You've done a bunch of stuff already. You've achieved things that you hadn't achieved before. Feel good about that. And then the third point is, remember your reason why. Why did you set this goal in the first place? Have you lost touch with some of those original motivators? Okay, so those are three great tips. Very simple article, but you can already see how this could be a universal concept. If you were to take this just one little section of a single PLR article, to personalize this, you could do several things. So I'm going to actually read this to you here. It says, remember back when you started this project? Yes, that was you that began it. Even if you're feeling powerless right now, the truth of the matter is you were the one who stepped into this, and it's still your decision about what to do next. That means that whether you decide to quit, change direction, or keep moving forward, it's up to you to make the decision, and that rewrites the script to put yourself back in charge. So this is a great tip, right? I could easily relate this tip to my audience, and that's what I would do here. If we go to the concept of personalization, I would take literally that one block of text from my PLR article as my source of inspiration or my starting point. Excuse me. And then I would tell my own story. I'm not going to get into the full story right now, but I have a story that I call how one day I became remotivated by over-delivering. At a high level, what the story basically is I very often get up early in the morning to work on my business, work on other stuff as well, but working on my business. And some of the projects that my business partner, Ted, and I have worked on over the years took months and months and months to come to fruition. And we definitely hit these blocks of, oh man, are we on the right track here? Like, I don't know if I want to keep doing this. It was like, low points, right? And what I would do very often is if I had to send a broadcast out or do something that day when I wasn't feeling great about the overall process, is I would focus on making my work today be something that's like totally surprising or over delivering to my audience. So I would get an instant burst of remotivation just by thinking to myself, okay, my audience is expecting an email today and it's maybe going to have a quick tip. I'm going to go way further. I'm going to give them a free download. I'm going to do that. So I would think of all these extra things I could do that weren't really on my initial agenda, and it would kind of empower me to move forward. So I could tell that story. I would use this PLR paragraph to remind myself of the story. Then I would tell that story by typing out, let's say, a 1 or 2 paragraph summary. Or I would record it into a video or possibly an audio, and then I could repurpose it into several formats. So my tip to you is, when you're reading a PLR article or an ebook, for an example, and you hit a very teachable point like this one that we're looking at the screen right now, reminding yourself who's the boss to stay motivated, turn it into a story right away. Take 5 minutes and brainstorm a time where this actually worked for you, and then turn it into content. So for me, what I would do is I would record a video of me telling you the story. At the end of that recording, I now have a completely unique, personalized piece of content that was inspired from PLR, but now is completely unique to myself, my personal brand, my company, and it's something that I can publish in several formats. I can put it into a course, I can put it up on YouTube. I now have a piece of video content that I can export as audio as well. I would then watch that video playback. I would literally look at myself on screen and listen to the way I told the story and take a couple of notes. And at the end of that note-taking session, I would have a paragraph or two extrapolating that story into my own words in text. And now that it's in text, I could tell the story in a graphic by pulling out like the key lessons or the key points. And I could use something like Canva to create it. So here's the process. Simple piece of PLR content, completely personalized by telling a story from that content. Hopefully that makes sense. This is a very, very powerful strategy for personalization, but it's all about the story, telling your own story of when this lesson applied. If you flip over to the next slide, Chad. You could do this exact same thing again with the second paragraph or the second bullet point in this single PLR article, right? The second point was saying, if you've lost your drive or your motivation is low for your goal, take a look back and see how far you've come. And what I would do in this case, if I wanted to use the strategy of telling someone else's story instead of my own, because it's still my content if I'm telling the story, even though it's someone else's, is I would, I'm a big CrossFit guy. I go to the gym every day, I work out, and I'm pretty good friends with my CrossFit coach, and I watch him coach other athletes through slumps. These people are very highly driven athletes. They're motivated to get to the next level, but they often get down on themselves because they're not able to get what they're currently working on. And his go-to strategy when they're in these negative mindsets is to remind them of, hey, remember a year ago when you couldn't even hold a handstand for 1 second and now you're doing like 10 handstand push-ups in a row? Then he'll kind of walk them through that experience. And remember that day where you were like really frustrated and you threw your towel, you couldn't even do it. Well, now you do that with ease. So the same process is going to happen again to you today. And he kind of changes their state that way. And it works over and over and over again. So there's another story I could tell inspired by the PLR that becomes a unique piece of content for me. I, again, would tell this story on video and then extract it into audio, text, and graphics. You might have a different style. You might not like speaking extemporaneously on video like I do. So maybe you tell the story in written format and you maybe limit yourself to 1 or 2 paragraphs so that you make the story very concise. Now you have a great piece of shareable content that you can repurpose into these other formats. How to repurpose them in these other formats, we're going to get into. This is, I'm not going to go through this again. It's just reworking the same idea. The third point in that article was, if you're feeling low and you want to remotivate yourself, remember why you started. Here's a third example, though, is I could retell the story of now he wasn't famous before, he's becoming famous, author named David Goggins, who basically used this exact strategy in a very powerful passage in his book that I read. So I would literally retell this inspiring story from a book that I read. But by me retelling that story, it's my content. Now I can use that content to build my brand, my personal brand, my company's brand, have content to share on all my different social platforms and on my blog simply by resharing it. And Marcia's saying that David Goggins is amazing. And yes, I'm glad you agree. I love David Goggins. He's amazing. Such an inspirational dude. So this is, to me, what I've just shown you here, these 3 different slides, is how personalization can work very, very powerfully, but also quickly. Because all you need to do is find 1 or 2 PLR articles ideally, if you're talking self-help space, just find something that you do frequently. Like for me, I often think about and write about and read about self-confidence. So I would go and search out a couple of self-confidence articles, and for sure, I would find a single bullet point or paragraph in that PLR article that would inspire me to tell a story that I've either personally experienced, that I witnessed, or that I read about. And now I can tell that story as a new piece of personalized, quote unquote, content.
I love it.
Okay. So that's all we have to say about personalization, but it kind of is a good segue here, because I've talked about this idea of telling a story. Now you've got this piece of content, whether you told your story in text, audio, or video. Now you've got something to start with that you can repurpose into dozens of other formats.